My wife and I, both in our 40s, are at a complete loss and need advice. Our oldest son, Neil, 18M, left without a word after we returned from a trip, and now no one will tell us where he is. We're beginning to fear that we made a terrible mistake. The trip that changed everything. We have 3 kids, Neil and our 2 younger ones, Jake, 10M, and Lily, 8F. A few weeks ago, we were planning a trip to Disneyland, but at the last minute, Jake and Lily threw a massive tantrum, demanding that we go right away instead of waiting for a more convenient time. They were inconsolable, crying and screaming about how unfair it was that all their friends had already been to Disneyland. We caved. We justified it by telling ourselves that Neil was older and probably wouldn't even care. He never really showed much interest in Disneyland before, so we figured he wouldn't mind staying behind. We told him we were taking his siblings on a trip, and he just nodded and said, "Have fun." He didn't argue. He didn't ask to come. He barely even reacted. Looking back, that should have been a warning sign. Neil was gone. We spent a week at Disneyland, having what we thought was a great time. We even bought Neil some souvenirs to make up for not taking him. But when we got home, we were shocked to find that his room was empty. His closet, his desk, even his childhood belongings, gone. His phone was disconnected. There was no note, no message, nothing. At first, we were furious. We thought he was being childish, running away over something so small. We texted him angrily, saying he was acting immature, that he could at least respond. When he didn't, we threatened to report him missing. But when we tried calling, we got the message that his number was no longer in service. That's when the anger turned to panic. The truth hits us hard. We called my parents, assuming Neil had gone to them. But the moment my mother picked up, she exploded on me. "Are you seriously calling me right now, after what you did?" We were stunned. She and my father berated us, calling us selfish, saying we abandoned our son on one of the most important days of his life. We had no idea what they were talking about until my father said, "You didn't even show up for his high school graduation." It felt like ice water had been dumped over us. We had been so caught up in Disneyland that we completely forgot about Neil's graduation. Not once had it crossed our minds. We tried to explain ourselves, to say we didn't mean to hurt him, but my parents were having none of it. My mother told us Neil had come to them after we left, devastated, feeling like he meant nothing to us. She said he refused to stay, though, that he said he needed to go somewhere he was actually wanted. We then called other family members, hoping someone would tell us where he went. But every call either ended with, "I don't know," or they hung up on us the moment they heard our voices. Even his friends wouldn't talk to us. Finally, we checked Neil's social media, only to find that he had blocked us on everything. The last picture we saw of Neil. At this point, we were desperate. We started searching online for any clue about where he might be. That's when we stumbled upon a picture of him on his girlfriend's social media. In the photo, Neil was sitting at a dining table, smiling with his girlfriend's parents. They were celebrating. There was a cake in front of him and a small pile of wrapped presents. He looked happy, and it broke something in us. But it wasn't just the photo that hurt. It was the caption. "Happy graduation to my amazing boyfriend, Neil. You deserve the world, and I'm so glad my parents could be here for you when yours couldn't even be bothered. Some people don't deserve the kids they have." Thousands of people had liked the post. The comments were brutal. Strangers calling us neglectful. People saying Neil was better off without us. We had never felt so ashamed. The kids finally confess. Jake and Lily eventually noticed something was wrong and asked where Neil was. We told them he had to go take care of something, but they weren't convinced. That's when Jake, in tears, admitted something that shattered us even further. "We did it on purpose." "Did what?" we asked, dreading the answer. "We threw a fit because we didn't want to go to Neil's boring graduation," Jake admitted. "We thought if we cried enough, you'd take us to Disneyland instead." Lily sniffled and nodded. We didn't think he'd leave. We were horrified. Our younger children had deliberately manipulated us into abandoning their brother on his biggest day. But this wasn't their fault. It was ours. We were the ones who allowed it. What now? We don't know what to do. Neil refuses to contact us. No one will tell us where he is. We don't even know if we'll ever get the chance to make things right. We've realized how terribly we messed up. We chose to spoil our younger kids at the cost of completely alienating our oldest. We can't take back what we did, but we don't want to lose him forever. Reddit, how do we fix this? Or is it already too late? Edit, we understand now. We've read the comments and we get it. We were terrible parents to Neil. We prioritized our younger children's temporary happiness over a once-in-a-lifetime moment for him. We abandoned him when he needed us the most. We don't deserve forgiveness, but we still want to try. We've reached out to his girlfriend, but she hasn't responded. We've sent messages to his email and any social media accounts that haven't blocked us yet. We're considering writing him a letter, in case he ever wants to read it. But we also understand now that Neil might never want to see us again, and we have no one to blame but ourselves. We just hope he's safe. Update 1. We tried to find Neil, but he doesn't want to be found. Since my last post, my wife and I have been desperately trying to find Neil. We tried calling every relative, every friend, even old teachers, hoping someone would tell us where he was. But no one did. Either they truly didn't know, or they just refused to tell us. We even went to the police, thinking maybe they could help. We explained the situation, how Neil had left without a word after we abandoned him on his graduation day. The officer listening to us barely reacted. Then he told us that since Neil was 18 years old and had left on his own, there was nothing they could do. He wasn't considered a missing person. I'll never forget the way the officer looked at us. There was this pity in his eyes, like he wanted to say something but decided against it. That somehow made it even worse. We left the station feeling even more hopeless. We finally told the kids the truth. Jake and Lily had been asking about Neil constantly. Every day they wanted to know when their big brother was coming home, why he wasn't answering, why he hadn't called. We couldn't keep lying to them, so we sat them down and told them everything. We told them that Neil wasn't coming home. We told them that he left because we had forgotten his graduation and hurt him deeply. We told them that our actions had made him feel like he didn't belong in our family. They both sat there, stunned, trying to process it, and then they started crying. Jake, who had admitted earlier that he and Lily threw the tantrum on purpose, sobbed so hard he could barely breathe. He kept saying, "I didn't think he'd leave. I didn't want him to leave." Lily clung to my wife, crying into her shirt, whispering, "We ruined everything." Seeing them break down made it all even more real. Neil had been their big brother, their protector. And now, he was gone. The ugly truth about our family. That night, my wife and I sat down together, just the two of us, and we talked for hours. We asked ourselves how we had let things get this bad. At one point, my wife started looking through our family photos, trying to find pictures of Neil. That's when we made a devastating realization. We barely had any. Most of the pictures in our albums and on our phones were of Jake and Lily. There were random ones of Neil here and there, but never just him. No pictures of us celebrating his achievements. No birthday pictures where he was the focus. And the last family photo of all 5 of us? It was from 5 years ago. We had spent so much time doting on our younger children that we had completely neglected our eldest. He had been there, but we had barely even acknowledged him. And now he was gone. The internet hates us. To make matters worse, the backlash online has been huge. After Neil's girlfriend posted about what happened, people tore us apart. Hundreds, maybe thousands of strangers called us horrible parents, saying we didn't deserve to have kids. Some said Neil was better off without us. Others sent us hateful messages, mocking us for losing our son. We wanted to defend ourselves, but what was there to defend? We had no excuse. We had failed our son. We decided to take Jake and Lily off social media completely. They don't deserve to be exposed to this. They're just kids. They already feel horrible enough. A conversation with Neil's grandparents. A few days later, my parents showed up at our house saying they wanted to talk. They were furious at us, and honestly, we deserved it. They reminded us of every warning sign we had ignored over the years. How Neil had always been quiet, always in the background, never asking for much. How we had pushed him aside over and over again. They told us we had failed him as parents. Then they told us something that completely broke us. Neil had apparently taken one of our family photo albums with him when he left. They were hesitant to give it to us, but eventually they handed it over. We flipped through the pages, hoping, praying, that we'd find proof that we hadn't been as neglectful as we feared. But as we looked through it, our hearts sank, because in that entire album, there were barely any pictures of Neil. It was all Jake and Lily, their birthdays, their holidays, their first day of school. And when Neil was in a picture, it was always in the background, never the focus, never the one we were celebrating. It was like he had been erased from our family. You forgot about me, so you don't need to know where I am. We begged my parents to tell us where Neil was. We told them we just wanted to apologize, to tell him we loved him. But my father shook his head. Neil told us that since you forgot about him, you don't need to know where he's going or how his life is. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Neil didn't just leave. He had cut us off completely. And for the first time, I realized we might never get him back. What now? We don't know what to do. We've tried everything. We've called, texted, sent messages through email and social media. Nothing. Neil is gone and he doesn't want to be found. I don't know if he'll ever forgive us. I don't know if we'll ever get the chance to make it right. All I know is that we broke our son's heart, and we might never get a chance to fix it. Update 2. It's been a few years and Neil still wants nothing to do with us. It's been a couple of years since Neil left, and our family has never been the same. My wife and I nearly got a divorce over what happened. We both struggled with guilt, with grief, and with the undeniable truth that we had failed Neil. We spent so many years believing we were good parents, that we were doing our best, but when we truly reflected on our past, we realized we had prioritized our younger children and left our eldest behind. There was no excuse for that. We tried to justify it at first, telling ourselves that we never meant to hurt him, that we always provided for him. But the truth is, we neglected him emotionally. He was the easy child, the one who didn't demand attention, and we let that lull us into believing he didn't need us the way Jake and Lily did. We were wrong. And now we're paying the price. How our family has changed. Jake and Lily have changed as well. They no longer throw tantrums, no longer expect to be given everything they want. They know their actions played a part in pushing Neil away. We never blamed them. We were the parents. We should have made better choices. But they still carry that guilt. We've been going to family therapy for the past year. It's helped, but it hasn't erased the pain. Jake especially has been struggling. He's old enough now to fully understand what happened, and he once broke down in a session saying, "I wish I never threw that tantrum. I ruined everything." It broke us to hear him say that. We told him over and over that this wasn't his fault, that it was our failure as parents that led to Neil leaving. But the weight of what happened still sits on his shoulders. Lily doesn't talk about Neil much, but I can see it in her eyes when she looks at old pictures. The regret. They both miss their brother, but they also know he's never coming back. We tried to find Neil, but he's been careful. Despite everything, we've never stopped trying to reach out to Neil. We've tried every method we could think of, but it's clear he wants nothing to do with us. Any relatives who weren't blocked have occasionally shared small updates. Neil has been thriving. We wanted to know where he was studying, but he's been very careful with his social media posts. No locations, no identifiable details. Just vague mentions of exams, achievements, and trips with friends. He's made sure we can't find him. As for his girlfriend, she set her account to private not long after our last update. Before she did, we sent her a long message, apologizing, acknowledging our mistakes, and begging her to pass along the message that we wanted to make amends. We don't know if Neil ever saw it, because she blocked us after that. Talk is cheap. A few months ago, my parents, Neil's grandparents, contacted us. They had spoken to Neil, and we had one last shred of hope that maybe, just maybe, he would finally be willing to hear us out. But instead, they gave us the final blow. And Neil doesn't want to talk to you. He doesn't want to reconcile. We begged them to let us at least send him a letter, something to show him that we truly understood how much we had failed him. But my mother hesitated before telling us Neil's response. Talk is cheap. They've shown me who they are for years. That was it. That was all he had to say. We were devastated. Neil doesn't believe in our words anymore. And honestly, I can't blame him. Watching our son grow from a distance. Since then, we've had to accept reality. The only glimpses we get of Neil are through other relatives' social media. They still post about him sometimes, his achievements, his travels, his life. And every time we see a picture of him, it feels like a knife to the heart. Because he looks happy. Happier than we ever saw him when he was living with us. And then recently, we found out something else. Neil is engaged to his longtime girlfriend, the one who stood by him when we failed him. We weren't invited to the engagement party. Of course we weren't. But when we saw the photos of him with her family, smiling, laughing, surrounded by people who clearly love and cherish him, we realized something painful. Neil has a new family, and we aren't part of it. What now? We still don't know if Neil will ever forgive us. Maybe he never will. We will keep trying, but we also understand now that he owes us nothing. We made our choices, and he made his. All we can do is hope that one day he'll give us another chance. But if he doesn't, at least we know he's happy, even if it's without us. Update 3. The intervention that destroyed any hope. I never thought things could get worse. I truly believed that maybe, just maybe, one day Neil would be willing to talk to us again. But after what happened, I don't think that will ever be possible. Because my brother, Neil's uncle, decided to take things into his own hands. And he ruined everything. The family dinner that was a setup. A few nights ago, my wife and I were invited to a family dinner at my brother's house. We didn't think much of it. He had been one of the few people still speaking to us, and we assumed he just wanted to catch up. But when we arrived, we saw him. Neil, sitting stiffly at the table, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. His fiancée was beside him, her eyes darting toward the door. They looked trapped, because they were. The second we stepped inside, Neil stood up and tried to leave. But other family members, the ones in on it, stepped in front of the door. Then, to my horror, they took his and his fiancée's phones. I knew right then this was a setup, and it was about to go very, very wrong. You owe your family an apology. Before I could stop it, my brother spoke. Neil, we're all tired of this. It's time you grow up and stop acting like a child. Neil stared at him like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. You owe your parents, your siblings, and everyone here an apology for the pain you've caused, my brother continued. We're not letting you leave until you finally take responsibility. Neil laughed. But it wasn't amused. It was cold, bitter, and full of rage. You have got to be kidding me, he said, shaking his head. He glanced at my wife and me, and for a brief second, there was a flicker of something, disbelief, maybe even betrayal. My wife looked at me in panic. I could already tell this was going to get worse. And then it did. For 30 minutes, Neil and his fiancée sat there silent, while family members took turns lecturing them. They called Neil ungrateful. They said he was being dramatic. They told him he was hurting his family. They insisted he was in the wrong. And Neil just sat there simmering. I wanted to say something. I wanted to stop it. But I was frozen, watching my son's anger reach a breaking point. The moment it all went wrong. Then, one of my cousins, a fool who should have known better, made a mistake. He placed a hand on Neil's shoulder, and Neil punched him in the face. Chaos erupted. My brother lunged toward Neil. Other family members tried to grab him. Neil shoved someone else away, his fiancée screaming at everyone to get away from them. And then the police stormed in. The aftermath. Unbeknownst to everyone, Neil's fiancée had managed to call her parents before things escalated, and they had recorded everything. The moment the cops entered, they saw exactly what was happening. They arrested multiple people on the spot. My brother, my cousins, a few other relatives who had blocked the door. My wife and I were in shock, frantically explaining that we had nothing to do with this. Neil didn't even look at us. He was too busy yelling at the family members being taken away, calling them every name in the book. He was furious. But the worst part? His fiancée's parents arrived while we were still trying to explain things to the police. They looked at us with disappointment, but then said something that made me want to collapse from relief. We did this for Neil. That's why we told the police you weren't involved. They saved us. But their next words cut deep. We love Neil like a son, and from now on, we will protect him like one. Then they looked at my brother, who was begging for forgiveness while being put in handcuffs, and said, "As for the rest of you, don't expect the same treatment. We've lost him for good." Neil didn't speak to us, didn't even acknowledge us. He just turned around and walked away. And now, my brother and several other family members are being charged with kidnapping and forcible confinement. Neil's fiancée's parents made sure of that. And I don't blame them, because I know the truth. This was the final straw. Neil will never forgive us now. And I don't think he ever should. Update 4. Consequences and the truth revealed. If I thought things couldn't get worse after the failed intervention, I was wrong. Because Neil's grandparents got involved. And they were furious. The family meeting. A couple of weeks after the disaster, Neil's grandparents called for a family meeting. Almost everyone attended, including my wife and me, Neil's uncle, and the other relatives involved in the intervention. From the moment we arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Neil's grandparents were livid. I had never seen them so angry before. They didn't waste time getting to the point. They looked at Neil's uncle and the other relatives involved and said, "Because of your actions, you have been cut off from your inheritance." The explosion. The room erupted into chaos. Neil's uncle immediately protested. So did a few of the relatives who were on his side. "You can't do this," he shouted. "I was doing what was best for the family." Neil's grandparents weren't having it. They owned multiple properties and businesses, and because of this disaster, they had decided to revoke any financial benefits these relatives would have inherited. Then the truth came out. They were warned. Neil's uncle and the others had already been warned not to get involved with Neil. Neil's grandparents told them clearly to leave him alone. They thought he had listened. But instead, he doubled down and dragged other family members into his mess. And when they confronted him about it, he made the worst excuse imaginable. "I am the next head of the family. It was my responsibility to fix Neil's childish behavior." The room went silent. Then his grandparents laughed, not out of amusement, but out of sheer disbelief. "You have no power here." Neil's grandfather looked at him with pure disappointment. "You are delusional. You don't have any power. You never did." Then he gestured to everyone around him. "And look at what you've done. You've made everything worse." Neil's uncle looked shocked, as if he had never considered that he wasn't as important as he believed. Criminal charges, regret. Neil's uncle, along with the others, are now facing criminal charges for forcible confinement and possibly kidnapping. There is no escaping the consequences of what they did. And the rest of the family? Most of them are ashamed. Some have even reached out to my wife and me, saying they deeply regret being involved. Others have gone silent, unwilling to acknowledge their role in what happened. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change anything. Neil is still gone. And after everything that's happened, I don't think he'll ever come back. Update 5. Consequences, hard truths, and a glimmer of hope. Neil's uncle has finally faced justice. He was convicted of forcible confinement, though the kidnapping charges were dropped due to legal technicalities. But Neil's fiancée's parents, they did not let up. They went hard on him and the other relatives involved, making sure this would serve as a warning to anyone else who ever thought about interfering in Neil's life again. The sentencing, more fallout. Neil's uncle tried to justify his actions in court. "I was just trying to fix my family." But the judge, and everyone else, shut him down fast. Since this was his first offense, he was given a lighter sentence, but he still had to serve actual jail time. As for the rest, they were sentenced to community service. Restraining orders were issued against them. They lost their jobs. And worst of all, to them, Neil's grandparents completely cut them off from the inheritance. Neil's grandparents did not provide any financial support for their legal battles. Instead, they personally handed them legal documents, making their disinheritance official. Neil's uncle left the courtroom a disgraced man. An unexpected visit. Then something happened that we never expected. Neil's fiancée and her parents came to see us. We were shocked. When they sat down, the air was tense. We asked the only thing that mattered. "Where is Neil?" They looked at us for a long time before answering. After what happened, he decided to keep his distance further. Our hearts sank. He was actually planning to reach out, but because of his uncle, he changed his mind. That revelation hurt more than anything. Neil knew about this conversation. He didn't fight it, but he made one thing clear. He wanted to be the one to decide when or if he'd talk to us again. And we had to accept that. The hard truth about our parenting. Then his fiancée's parents told us everything. Neil was known at school as the kid with absentee parents. We never showed up for his events or achievements. He tried to talk to us countless times, but we always pushed him away. His fiancée's parents stepped in when we wouldn't. But the worst part? We actually told them off when they tried to help Neil. "Mind your own business. Don't interfere in our parenting." That's what we said to them years ago when they tried to tell us Neil needed more support. So they backed off. But they still supported him. Because they cared. And when we left him behind for Disneyland, that was Neil's breaking point. That was the moment he knew he meant nothing to you. Those words will haunt us forever. Before leaving, they made one final request. Do not reach out. Let Neil come to you. Neil's grandparents visit. A few days later, Neil's grandparents came to see us. They too had a long conversation with us, and they confirmed something we didn't know. Neil refused any financial help from them. When he left for college, he did everything on his own. He refused their money, refused their resources. Everything he accomplished, he did it without anyone's help. His grandparents made one thing clear. If you want us to help your younger children, we need to see that you've truly changed. They acknowledge that our other kids have changed and are genuinely remorseful. So they will provide support, but only if they see that we are truly committed to doing better. Hope for the future. Later that night, we spoke to our children, and they've grown a lot. They are no longer the spoiled kids they once were. They still miss their brother. They still feel guilty. But despite everything, they are optimistic. They believe that one day they will see Neil again. And we can only hope that they're right.
What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping family drama, shocking betrayals, and the revenge stories you won't believe.